Hello, my name is Mano Toth, and I'm a senior technical writer at PSP DevKit. Thank you very much for coming to this talk, which will be on documentation as marketing, ? As you know, with all clickbait titles that end with a question mark, the answer is never in the article. So I'm not going to give you a straight answer to this question either. But I will hopefully present to you a few ideas with which we can take the discussion about the relationship between tech writing and marketing to another level. So I think this topic is somewhat provocative, mainly for the reason that in my experience, technical writers are very often suspicious of marketing as a field of knowledge, marketing as content, and marketing as a department with people. There is, I think, a deeply held belief that technical writing and marketing are diametrically opposed to each other. As a result, I think technical writers are very often defensive of the documentation, defending the documentation to be free of meddling from marketing and sales text, which would pollute our lovely documentation. There might be good reasons for this defensiveness, but I also think this is a sign of an overreaction as well. So it's an overreaction because it precludes fruitful collaboration between departments with very similar goals, with people who have a lot to offer to documentation, and we have a lot to offer to them, vice versa. So my argument is that this supposed conflict between technical writing and technical text and marketing text is not necessarily the case, because if done well, technical writing and marketing have a lot to learn from each other and to offer to each other. So the structure of the presentation is the following. I will start with a premise, which I have already explained to you. That documentation or marketing are often in conflict with each other. I will give a few reasons why I think this is the case to support this premise. And from this, I would like to show you how we can collaborate instead. So actually, first I would show you that this is not necessarily the case. This premise is not actually not factually true, and we can instead work with each other towards our common goals. I would also show you that it's not just that we can, but we should be doing collaboration. We need this collaboration because this is the only way we can further our common objectives. And finally, I give you a few ideas of how this collaboration can work, especially on how on which areas documentation and marketing are necessarily or kind of naturally dependent on each other and can help each other in many respects. So to support the first argument, mainly the premise that there is a certain conflict between documentation and marketing, I think a simple exercise would do. If you just look at the website of almost any IT company, I would guarantee you that 99.9% of the cases, the documentation will not be fully integrated in the main website. This is just an observation. This is not necessarily a supporting argument for this. But yes, there are quite often at least 3 layers or at least 3 distinct parts of an IT company's website. So what you usually have, first, you have a flashy, beautifully designed, compelling, engaging, very SEO optimized landing page. If you find the little link to the documentation, which sometimes is just not there, you are very often, or I would say almost exclusively, taken to a documentation site, which kind of looks okay, a bit dull, a bit gray, a bit boring, but you know, it's there. At least this has the usual parts. The text is not completely jumbled up. Sometimes it is faked to look like the landing page, and sometimes it is faked to look like it surprisingly well, but you just feel that something is off. So maybe the navigation structure works completely differently from the main websites. The header is actually not aligned in the same way, or there is some styling visual discrepancy between the sites, and these are just the aesthetic things. There could be many more ways to make you feel that you are working on now, you are now taken to a different company's documentation site. And then there is the third part, which is usually the hardest to find, and the completely neglected, very ugly, very, very boring API reference site. I think that these 3 elements are almost always present for any IT company. It would look like this, and one reason you can think, one explanation for this discrepancy is it's just the result of the fact that different teams work on these projects, who use different tools to generate the website. They have different requirements for the website and for their tools, which is, I think, a fair assumption. This is what usually happens. So the marketing team would be most often responsible for the landing page, and they have a content management system, a CMS, which is very different from the other teams' requirements and other teams' tools. Documentation would be mostly managed by technical writers, and the API reference is very often the engineer's playground. And it kind of makes sense for these teams to go with their own tools, with their own processes, with their own style and design. But at the end of the day, it does feel like these parts of the document of a website are very misaligned. And I would like to think that there is another reason why IT companies' websites are so fragmented, and simply because each of these departments, each department I have talked about, marketing for the landing page, tech writing for documentation, and engineering for the API reference, each of these departments has their own turf, their own little responsibilities, their own terminology for the same things. The responsibilities are different. They own different parts of the work process, and it makes complete sense for them to do the thing, do it the way they do it, which results in this disjointed experience. In the best case, these departments just don't care about integration too much, because they are just, they are under time pressure. They are just trying to get the features out, the documentations out, the blog post out. They just want to do it the quickest possible way, going through towards the lowest possible resistance. And yeah, that sometimes means not integrating with the other departments or the other parts of the website. In the worst case, I would even say that sometimes these departments are suspicious of each other's efforts or very defensive of their own turf. From my own experience as a tech writer, as I already told you, I think whenever we received feedback from marketing saying, oh, actually, could you please explain this use case better? Or actually, could you even kind of consider placing this paragraph in your article? And it was always a red flag, like marketing people, they are trying to force something on us. They are trying to make our documentation site into a marketing site. Red alert. And this, I think, is the main reason why you are faced with this very fragmented experience on IT companies' websites. And this is why I would say there is some kind of conflict, discrepancy, opposition between marketing and tech writing, whatever you want to call it. I would also like to share with you an anecdote. It's around 2 years ago, when my fixed-term contract at the company I worked for was coming to an end, and I was looking for a job. And I made it to the last stage, where I was asked a very simple question. What would you do if a marketing person would want to see some engaging, some marketing text in the documentation sites of a newly launched product? And, it was just an interview. I was trying to be pragmatic. So I said, it depends on the quality of the text, the length of the text. I would probably adapt it to our own needs. Maybe I wouldn't even include it if it really feels out of place in the article. But some guides would need some kind of explanation of the use case. So I don't necessarily think it's something that should be resisted, but at the same time, of course, we shouldn't copy paste. So, I was trying to kind of say it depends. Be very diplomatic about my answer, because that's what I honestly think, that when, depending on the context, it could make sense or it could not make sense to include that. It was a strange experience, because first they told me a few days later that I got the job. I was quite happy. And then another 2 days later, they told me, actually, they changed their mind. And I asked for their feedback, because it was a very strange experience. And the feedback clearly said that they would like to have someone more outspoken in this role, someone who would defend technical writing and tech writer interests better. And this made me think, like, I can't fault these people because they felt they felt was right. They needed to uphold their own tech writing principles, and they felt that someone who would be a Trojan horse of marketing, someone who would kind of jeopardize that great wall we have to defend our beautiful documentation site, is not someone who should work for us. And I can understand that reasoning completely, but at the same time, I started thinking, what are the technical writing principles exactly which would actually preclude us from considering including this kind of marketing text, not as it is, but just the idea of considering including this kind of argument about the use case, or the paragraph about that explains the use case in the user's terms, what precludes us from including it in the documentation side? So I had a look at some of the seminal works on technical writing. Not surprisingly, neither of them said don't take any help or any text from marketing people. But I found that very often they came up with something like this. So I took this from Mike Markle's and Stuart Selber's Technical Communication book, which is now in its 13th edition. So I think it's a pretty seminal book in our field. And they enumerated the following measures of excellence in technical documents: honesty, accuracy, clarity, and a few more. But these three were on the top of the list. And it struck me. It felt like I heard people who would say that marketing does not fit this description. I've kind of did not accept that simplistic view of marketing. So I tried to look at a field I'm not very familiar with, tried to look at marketing, looked at different marketing, seminal marketing texts, and to find some information on what is a measure of excellence, or how you would think about good marketing. And surprisingly, neither of these said dishonest marketing is good, or marketing is by nature dishonest. So this is a prejudice that non-marketing people like to repeat. But in the field of marketing, I think that most of these books actually said that dishonest marketing, it may be quite common, but it is doomed to fail. This is bad marketing. So if you look at Seth Godin's, this quote from Seth Godin's book, This is Marketing, which is also, I think, could be considered a very seminal work in its field. It defines what good marketing is. Good marketing, actually the best marketing, involves creating honest stories. That these stories that resonate among people. And what is even more interesting to me is the second sentence, where Godin talks about how marketers offer solutions to people, and how they help them solve their problems. Because especially the second part is something that I think technical writers do as well. Actually, if I could think about a good definition of what tech writers do, I would probably say the same sentence. So, this, I think, is especially true. Honest marketing is especially true if you are writing documentation and if you're creating marketing for developers, because developers are very good at sniffing out empty marketing slogans in an instant. So I think that actually, based on this research, I didn't find anything in these tech writing and marketing works which would give the impression that we as tech writers cannot work together or include ideas or texts from marketing. Actually, most of the research that came from this suggested to me that we are actually very close to each other. So now I would like to recapitulate my premise, which is I think there is a widely held belief that tech writers and marketing are in opposition to each other in terms of their goals and their interests. But I think that this belief is false. It is made up to defend each department's turf. It is made up for gatekeeping purposes, to defend their own little terrain. Why I would never say that there is a grain of truth in it is that tech writing and marketing content do follow different conventions. We expect different things from technical documents and different things from marketing documents. They use different tone, a different style, and for good reasons. You would expect to serve different purposes in a way. But even though we would say that forcing the style of, let's say, the style, tone, or the text conventions of marketing to tech writers is of course wrong, but this does not mean that we shouldn't learn from the text, or we shouldn't learn from the content that marketers produce, and vice versa. So for me, what follows from this is that technical writing and marketing can be conducted in a way that they come into conflict with each other, especially if they try to impose their own conventions, styles, and tone on each other. But there is also a way to do it well, and this is what I would like to explore in the second half of the presentation. So first, why do we need this collaboration? And I would like to show you how much our goals are aligned. So tech writing and marketing both target, roughly speaking, two groups, very roughly speaking. We have our existing users and we have our prospects. So people who are not yet our users, but could potentially be our users. There is the third group who are not users and not prospects, but we don't care about them because people who we can't capture are not really part of our efforts. So these three groups, existing users and prospects, and what technical writing does is, for prospects, we would like to help them decide. We would like to give them an honest assessment of the capabilities of our product and show them how they can solve their problems with our products. To existing customers, we offer two things. One of them is a way to solve their problems. So we would, simply speaking, this is actually probably the biggest part of our work, come up with guides to their use cases and to tell them to solve this problem, follow this procedure, and you do 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're done. You have solved your problem. But there is something more we want to do, and I think excellent documentation, excellent tech writing does a third goal as well, which is it enables our users to explore our product, to go beyond their immediate problem, and to see what our product can do, what more our product can do for them. And in this exploration process, they realize that our product can solve problems for them, which they did not even knew about. So we can actually solve problems which they did not even know they existed. And believe it or not, marketing has very similar goals with respect to these two user groups. So the first one, with respect to prospects, marketing would like to engage with prospects. They would like to capture their attention, and that they would like to navigate them within this sales funnel. Secondly, for existing users, marketing would like to keep them happy so that they stay with us. They don't go to our competitors. They don't churn. That is retention. And for the third, goal, marketing very often it's a very important goal of marketing to upsell and cross-sell. This basically means that you take an existing user and you try to offer them more. You try to solve another problem for them, which might be different from their initial problem. And you upsell them, you upgrade their license, you sell them a different product, or you sell different components of the product they already have. Or you cross-sell to them, which means that you are suggesting or trying to sell them a product from a portfolio that your company has, which again solves another problem for an existing user, so to kind of expand their engagement with the company. And I think that these two sets of goals are very much aligned. So technical writing would like to give a clear message about the capabilities of the product so that prospect can decide whether it's for them or not, which is very similar, or actually very much aligned with the marketing goal of engaging the attention, of giving a clear message to prospects about what we can do. Tech writing would like to keep existing users happy by solving them problems, and which means that we would like to retain them. And also, we would like to help our users do more than they initially wanted. So this is very much aligned with the marketing goal of upselling and cross-selling. So now that we have established that our goals are aligned, why does it make sense to pursue these goals jointly? And my main argument here is that users don't really care about which department was responsible for this page, which department designed which infographic or which part of the page, or how they come up with the navigation. What they care about is a seamless, unified user experience. Something that is very simple. You are taken from your departure point. You land on the landing page, and you feel that there is a flow through this website, a third process that you can follow. And we need to mimic that third process, that the user's journey through our website. And the only way to do that is to do it together, because otherwise you are ending up in a very disjointed, fragmented user experience. And why is that a problem? Is that especially new users, but also like prospects and new users, they would have very, very low motivation to continue. So if they see your landing page and they don't know where to go next, they will just go to another company. If they see your documentation and they don't know how to get started, how to sign up, how to go to sales, how to go to their dashboard and manage their first API call, they will just churn. They just don't have time for this. So there is a very high risk of losing the attention of low motivation prospects and customers if we don't cooperate. And lastly, I would like to give you a few examples of how we can collaborate. And I think that how technical writing and marketing can very fruitfully collaborate. The first and foremost, I would say, the most important way we can leverage marketing skills is in improving the discoverability of our documentation pages. Marketing arguably has the most experience with SEO optimization of creating procedures with which your documentation pages would rank very highly on the search engine result pages, and customers would find this solution to their problem. Granted, not every user searches through Google. Some of them would go to the documentation site and use the inside search, but many of them would go through Google, and you need to capture their attention as well. And while technical writers do know something about SEO as well, most of us are not experts in it, and most of us just don't have time to do it to the extent and to the level, to the detail that many marketings and marketers can. And this is exactly where we have probably the most important point of collaboration. This is important for us so that we help our users solve their problems. They find our guides and they can be happy. And also it is important for marketing, because if prospects find our documentation, it is likely that they will then follow through and go with and go through the landing page and become our users as well. We need to communicate a very clear message about our capabilities, and this message needs to be unified across the marketing part of the website, the documentation part of the website, and any part of the website. Because we need to provide a unified, seamless user experience, because this is how we keep users in the flow. This is how we retain their attention, and this is how we can guarantee that they can navigate through our landing page, documentation, and app and dashboard and back in the most intuitive way possible. So I think, to kind of conclude all this, marketing and tech writing have a responsibility to work together. We have a responsibility towards our users to ensure that this seamless user experience happens, not just because we would make more money that way, although that's important as well, but just because we have our responsibility to our users to ensure that they can achieve their goals in the easiest possible way using our tools. Thank you very much for your attention.
But yeah, thank you both for your lovely talks here at Write the Docs. And maybe I can get started with some of the Q&A. We were talking now about marketing. So Mano, one of the questions that we got from the audience is that some marketing teams like to hide information under some sort of contact us thing, whereas in technical documentation, it's available there. It's really available. And what's your advice for solving this contradiction?
I'm not sure to what extent. I think it's a great question, and I haven't really thought of this before, so it really put me on the spot. But I don't really see too much of a contradiction, because it's, for me, marketing has a good reason most of the time, I suppose, to hide some of the content. Basically, they want to get contact details. That's what they need, an email address most of the time. And that's why you need to give your email address to get your white paper or some kind of product trial or whatever. I think for documentation, it's not necessarily an issue. So I mean, or there may be one point of conflict would be where documentation would like something, would like to make something publicly available, whereas marketing would say, oh no, this should go into the white paper. And unsurprisingly, I'm not sure I have a kind of a very clear way of saying, kind of siding on either one of these arguments. I would say that in these cases, probably establishing some sort of criteria about kind of what would make sense for publicly available information, and what's the value of kind of getting those contact details from the clients, and this criteria could kind of encompass questions about, is it about the use of our product? If it's about a procedure, we don't want to hide this in a PDF somewhere that you need to give your contact details to obtain. And I think that's probably that's something that we can actually convince marketers that it would make it would actually drive away more people if a simple procedure, for a simple procedure, they would need to give contact details and jump many hurdles. So it's all about kind of also speaking their language, so marketers' language, about, okay, so you're saying that you get contact details, that's a benefit, but how many people are going to be driven away if you are like if you're hiding simple basic information in something for which you need to sign up. So yeah, this kind of conversation can go a long way. So I'm not sure I'm answering this to the fullest, but yeah, here are just some ideas.
Yeah, I guess there's always a it depends kind of way for most questions.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Tibbs, you mentioned that your developer relations team sits within the marketing organization. Have you had to deal with this tension between one part wanting to expose more information than the other part?
Not really. The marketing team have personas that include developers and so on, and they're quite aware of the fact that developers are resistant to giving information in order to get information. That does make it harder to do tracking for development documentation sites, because obviously we'd love to know how many people are looking at our docs, but if we're too intrusive, they won't stay there. It's not. It's not something I really. Being an ex-developer, I can give the developer's viewpoint, and we have a lot of those around, so we can ask them. But I don't know the marketing side of it very well. I defer to Mano as knowing much more about it, I think. But I think personas seems to be the right way to go, and I love the concept of personas. So.
Yeah, I agree. My role is in product management, so it's something I'm dealing with frequently.
No, I'm a tech writer, so I'm also kind of not very knowledgeable about the marketing side of things. On our side, especially what you mentioned about developers being resistant to not just to give up information, but also to they're very resistant of big words and empty promises. So if they see something that you cannot substantiate, they will most likely jump in 2 seconds. I think that's an argument that could be made for making as much information available publicly, especially in a developer-focused company, because when they see a competitor who offers everything on just readily available, and you see people, you see a website where you need to sign up and talk to a person who would want to kind of send you up for a demo and everything, I think developers would always opt for the first option. It's just a guess, but I think a pretty good one.
Yeah, that's true. Moving on to a different kind of question, Tibbs, in one of our previous talks, Emilia was talking about the maintenance of documentation and how important it is to keep docs up to date. And we got a question from the audience now about how do you review and update the rules regularly? Kind of like, how do you maintain the rules of the documentation?
So we developer documentation in the kind of state we're moving towards has only been around for a year and a half now, I think. And so the rules, I think, when I joined, we already had Veil for running the rules and so on, and we had a fairly good set of checking spellings of things, capitalization of things. One of my first jobs was to add the registered trademark checking, because that's really quite important when we're talking about Apache products and other things like that. It's polite, and it's also required to get those things correct. We're still working out how would we add new rules. We don't yet have enough rules to be doing much triage to remove old ones. So we're still in an add-in phase. We knew we wanted to add checking for alt text missing, because we make that mistake a lot. I wanted the check for doing the markdown link in restructured text, because I make that mistake quite often. Both of those I wrote yesterday, so there are PRs out for those now. And we have, in the back of our minds, we have some other rules that we would like, and we will generate issues for those. But at the moment, we don't have the time. We're busy on other things. We're porting our documentation from an old documentation system to a new one. That's taking up most of the time. It's conference season at the moment. And because it's DevRel is mostly in charge of the developer documentation at the moment, everything slows down in conference season. But ultimately, we'll do it by using issues and PRs in the normal way. We'll brainstorm for things we think might be needed. We've got the bare minimum at the moment of what really makes life easy, I think. And we'll have eventually to judge when do we stop When is it too many rules? We're also really seriously thinking that at some point we might want to adopt a package of rules. Maybe we'll go Google, Microsoft, whatever, so that we can just say, hey, these people have put a lot of thought into this. Let's adopt it. But again, we haven't even started looking at that yet.
Yeah, kind of going off of what you just answered, one of the questions we had is if there are APIs exposed from or the popular grammar tools that you think are worth integrating or that you can integrate to your linting.
I have a personal distrust of grammar tools because I remember Word when it was really bad at this sort of thing. We're an international company. A lot of our developers, technical writers, marketing people, English is not their first language. And I personally, this isn't a company response, this is just me, feel that trying to perfect the grammar, trying to follow arbitrary grammar rules would probably cause us to have a bit more time fiddling with documentation. We also, our development site is open source, so anyone can contribute in theory. I mean, in practice, we'd love them to. We haven't had many external contributors, but it's a good idea. So we'd have to have tools that could be run by people who weren't in company. We also have to consider that we couldn't use something like Grammarly, for instance, because we don't want text going outside the company and then coming back in. That makes our security people very unhappy. So I think that I don't know of anything we'd use directly. The LTAC tool I was talking about in the talk is probably the closest to something we might do for something like that. We haven't explored that very much. I think there are too many other low-level things we can do first. It's definitely something to think about longer term, though, because I think as time goes on and tools are getting more sophisticated, they're getting better at doing things. And my attitude from when Word was new is very outdated, and I probably should revisit it.
All right. Yep. Thanks for that. I think it's an interesting angle thinking about it. It's not just internal to the company, but if you want people to contribute, your tools need to be available for everyone to use.
Yes.
Now jumping to a different kind of question, Mano, I think everyone really enjoyed the imagery you used in the different kinds of documentation. So one of the questions we did get is like, so if you have a landing page or a normal docs or API reference docs, maybe they look different because they fulfill different communication goals or they have different personas or people looking at them. I guess what's your take on that?
No, that's actually a pretty good remark. And I also liked the conversation he generated in the chat. Personally, what I kind of, in the second half of the talk, I did make it clear that, of course, it makes a lot of sense that marketing text and technical documentation have different. I mean, we have different expectations from the language itself or from the purpose. I mean, from those perspectives, we would want to see some. I mean, it makes sense to have different, slightly different stylistic conventions and stuff. But at the same time, the point I tried to make is that for users, or as Sam mentioned, for anyone, like just human beings coming to a website and seeing a very disjointed experience is not going to invite them to try our product further, or it's not going to be a good experience. So I think a good developer experience or any experience comes from the fact that you'll stay in the flow. And that kind of requires a lot of harmonization between the different parts of the website. It doesn't mean that everything needs to look the same, but just having a unified way of navigation, on like top navigation, or a unified look and feel. Just the fact that you are kept in the flow by first like going. It doesn't have to necessarily be the first page. The marketing landing page is just a placeholder. Another commenter, I think, rightly said that when you are searching through Google, any page can be a landing page, and that's true. But what I meant is, like, whenever you start, you can easily go to whichever part of the whole website and go through the experience of, I want to learn about the features or what I can do with this. I want to learn how to do stuff. I want to go to the trial. I want to sign up for the sales through the sales form, and I want to open a support ticket. And all the point I wanted to make is that you need to be, throughout this user journey, you want to give a unified experience where they are kept in the flow. And if all these different parts are managed by very different teams with different conventions and different tools and different styles or just look and feel, you are not going to make the lives of users as easy as possible.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that you make. Like, just because we have different people writing it, it doesn't mean it doesn't have to feel like 3 different experiences, even if they are optimized to different personas or different people looking at it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're at the end of this Q&A session. Thank you, Mano, and thank you, Tibbs, for your lovely talks and for answering the questions from everyone. And we're now going to head into lunch. And I just wanted to remind everyone about the lightning talks that are happening at 2:25. Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your lunch.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.